So yesterday I had the privilege of going and seeing a special showing of James Gunn's new Superman movie. And I am a huge Superman fan. And as a parent, I thought I would sit down today and give you guys a spoiler-free review, talk about, is this movie safe for kids, where I kind of fall within kind of that category, and generally what I look for and what I don't want to see in movies that I take my kids to. But then ultimately later in the video, and we will have a special graphic that kind of highlights it. We'll do a little song and dance or something like that to say and dive further into kind of what we saw in the movie in a spoiler way. But the vast majority of this video is going to be completely spoiler free, and it's really going to be targeted around, the conversation, is this safe for kids? I think that's an important aspect. That's something I always look for, whether I'm playing video games or, watching movies. What kind of shows can I take my kids to? There's also going to be a little bit of a conversation. We saw a lot of hubbub about this, movie online. And I like to address some of that hubbub because I think at the end of the day, a lot of it was just farming rage bait online. And I think we've already seen people start to kind of walk back that view. And we can talk about why that is, but I'm not going to touch on it too much because it's not really important, because this movie is incredibly fun. This is perhaps one of the best Superman movies that I have seen in theaters, and I was not around for the original run. I have seen those. I do love those, and I think those obviously stand as really strong classics. I think Superman, especially with DC over the last several decades, has tried different things, and some have been successful. I don't blame Snyder at all. I do blame the WB execs who killed the Snyderverse. That unfortunately will not be coming back, but I wish we were able to at some point see Snyder's vision for his DCEU. However, that sun is set. We are now in a brand new era with James Gunn's DCU, and already it's firing on all cylinders. So this is a movie, just, fan to fan, I think is a must see in the theaters. I'm going to go see it again with the kids. And that's what I was kind of watching this movie to evaluate it for, to see what kind of age I'm willing to kind of take the kids. For those of you who don't know, I have 6 kids, aging range from 11 all the way down to 2. And I can give you guys a heads up, the 2-year-old ain't going to go see this movie because I want to make sure we all, both the kids that we'll be taking, have a good time. But let's talk, what is in terms of the content of this movie. I didn't see anything that I would even judge as remotely scary or terrifying. There are obviously some big, fight scenes and some really great effects. There's some real interesting world building that they do here. But let's talk about some of the things that I wish they would change or have changed in the edit. And first and foremost, there is, it's rated PG-13. There are no F-bombs, or at least that I detected at all, which was really refreshing, because typically in a PG-13 movie, to hit that rating, they have to drop one F-bomb just to kind of hit it. They do say the S word several times. Sometimes not necessarily, it isn't the highlight, it isn't the focus, it is, but it just kind of happens throughout. So if that's going to be a deal breaker for you, just note that word is present in the movie. I think I've probably counted about 3 times, give or take. So just note that my count could be off a little bit, but the other aspect of it, and this is the one thing that really bothered me because it also felt so unnecessary, and they played it for humor. They have one GD in the movie, in which that it comes from Mr. Terrific, and he says, "I'm GD, Mr. Terrific," and it's like, I thought that could have been delivered much better. And personally, that's something that really bothers me in movies when we see like gratuitous, like where it doesn't. I didn't even think it fit the scene. And ultimately, if they had changed it to anything else, I think the movie would be an easy 10 for me. And so, age range wise, where I fall right now, I'm honestly debating if I want to take my 4-year-old to the movie. It really just depends on how she acts, this week, because I think that's something that, when watching the movie, with the language aside, there wasn't anything that was for me like, oh, I don't want them to see that yet, or that's going to be too scary for them. The movie is fun. It's got some good humor in it. It has some campiness to it. It feels like they ripped Superman out of the comics and put him on the big screen. It feels like, for those of us who are original fans, especially of the Superman animated series, they do a really good job with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I really kind of stood out to me and kind of when we get into the spoiler section. But that's just something that I wanted to let the parents out there know what's, contextually in, kind of from a language perspective. There isn't any sex, which is really great. And I'll say some of that stuff. So I'll make sure we transition into spoilers here in just a little bit. But the relationship with the characters, it's just wonderfully acted. It is it feels like a real complete thought, a real complete vision. The movie builds. I didn't feel like there was anything that was wasted. That was like, hey, we touched on this, but it never ended up coming back. Everything that's on the screen really feels relevant. And this really is kind of what I left the theater feeling, especially when I looked to my mom. I took my mom, my brother, and my brother-in-law to the movies last night, and we all got to go see it. And we were talking about it after the fact. And it's like a part of me wishes that the movie was like 20 minutes longer. I would have loved to have more Clark Kent, more Daily Planet, more of that, because the movie does move at a pretty quick pace. Like there's a lot of things that really do happen, scene after scene after scene. And it's like 2 hours and 9 minutes, and it does not feel like a 2-hour movie. It feels like you're there and you're along for the ride. And then all of a sudden the ride ends. And stay around for the post-credit scenes. There are several. And I think that they are kind of fun to kind of see how they play it out. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the spoiler free is the online, in a way, the discourse that happens online and how it doesn't necessarily, I think, reflect what we actually got in this movie. Personally speaking, I think there's two kind of online kind of campaigns or discourses. One is the Snyderverse, the DCEU. People are saying not my Superman. I really would love to see them and see what they take away from this, because if you enjoyed Smallville, if you enjoyed Superman, you're going to find a lot of joy in what they have delivered here. And so it's really exciting to see. And his character comes through in such a beautiful and profound way. But it's interesting to see how him and Lex kind of interact. And again, we'll save some of that more for the spoiler section of this review. Now, the other aspect is prior to the launch, we saw a lot of right-wing, a lot of right-leaning influencers talking about an interview that James Gunn gave about this being a story about immigrant. And that seemed to kick up a fervor. Honestly, I do wonder why that question was even asked of him in the first place, but he did give an interesting answer, and in a way that I feel caught a lot of people off guard. So it did pop up online, and I think that discourse has gone completely out of favor because there was none of that in the movie. This is not a political movie. Everything does involve our politics, right? So I get what James Gunn was saying there. I don't know if it was out of context, if he was being cheeky, if he was just trolling. But all that being said, this is a fun movie. This is just a pure entertainment, down home, down earth, good old boy Superman trying his best to save the day, completely in love with life and caring about the smallest of the creatures to saving anybody who he can. And he feels that weight, and it's something that brings him a lot of joy. So he's somebody who is having the time of his life, being Superman and trying to help out any way he can, despite what people are saying, even though that does come up a little bit in the movies itself. But all in all, I just honestly feel like, I don't know what that was about, if it was about making people look foolish and make some assumptions. And it's perfectly fine if they see the movie and they don't like it. But I did not catch any element of that. In fact, if anything else, it feels like it's a movie made for anybody in any political worldview. It was just a really fun and entertaining movie, and one that I'm going to see again with the kids, and one that I'm rooting now for. I'd love to see an extended cut of this movie. I'd love to see them be able to go back and add in more to it, like we saw with the Lord of the Rings. I think that would be something really exciting, whether they did that as a theatrical release with the extended, or if it was when it comes out on DVD, Blu-ray, streaming services, if they had an extended edition option. Personally speaking, I think the movie in and of itself is an absolute must-see in theaters. As a parent to parent, we all know how hard it is to get out to the movies. So I'm very thankful that I had my dad to watch the kids last night. So me, my mom, my brother, and my brother-in-law were able to go and see this movie in the theaters early, which was really great. But that's not going to be the only time I see it in theaters. And now I think it's pertinent that we can transition. It's a little song and dance for y'all. Transition into the spoiler review portion of this movie. I'm giving you guys plenty of time. If you want to come back and watch, be sure to check the chapter markers. You can jump back in, giving you plenty of time to click off the video. Thank you so much for being here, you amazing people. Hit that like button on your way out, one way or the other. But outside of all that, guys, let's now talk about kind of the story and more. It opens up and it has the most, like, I enjoy enumeration where it's like you have, these kind of beats. So it opens up with text, like you're out in, Antarctica. It's like 300 years ago, metahumans, yada, yada, yada. 30 years ago, then, 3 months ago, 3 days ago. And it just keeps stepping into that, using that number 3 on repeat to get to the point where Superman crash lands into the Antarctic, what we saw with the first trailer where he's been beat up. And it says he's been Superman for 3 years. And then 3 months ago, he stopped a war. And then, 3 minutes ago, he lost the first fight he's ever, had in his career as Superman. And that is kind of where this movie picks up. And it's really, really well done. It sets the tone. It gets me excited for more DCU. And then that's where you see Crypto come in. And Crypto plays a huge part in this movie. He isn't just kind of, he is integrated into this movie in a very fun and interesting way. And for any pet lovers out there, yeah, there are some moments where you're just like, you better not hurt that dog. And I think that also transitions into a kind of Lex Luthor being and just the absolute most, just evil. He, they did such a good job with Lex Luthor. Like, he is so incredibly smart. He's got so many resources. He is, his motivations are interesting and clear. Like, he doesn't feel like a two-dimensional character. He feels well-rounded, and there's so many interesting kind of touch points and world-building points, especially when you see him locking up ex-girlfriends in his pocket dimension, which was just phenomenal. The pocket dimension thing comes up. It's a key, kind of pillar to the movie itself. It leads to one of the biggest, most interesting climaxes, along with everything else that is going on. And I thought that was actually just well done. It builds on itself, that you get interesting information and more. Lois Lane and Clark Kent, Lois Lane and Superman, was an incredible relationship to see on screen. They're early in the relationship. I think the movie said they were 3 months into this relationship, and I thought that was really great. They have some, there's some struggles. The interview scene I thought was really well done. She's like, you can really see like her reporter side. How does she balance that with dating Clark Kent and Superman? And I thought that was really well done, especially the struggles, but also just the back and forth, the struggle she has. She said that she's not really good with relationships. I think that comes across. Obviously, Superman and Lois contextually have different worldviews, and that was really exciting to see kind of those ideas play off against each other, and the actors did an incredible job at delivering these characters, making them feel real and alive. And then you also love every time they're on in the scene. Anytime it's Lois, anytime it's Clark, anytime they're together, it's dynamic and it's wonderful. And I'm really, really happy for that. Now, going further into the overall story, it's really well crafted. Obviously, Lex is behind everything. He's got some really interesting resources, especially in terms of how he's orchestrating these fights. And the big campaign is to try and defame Superman. People really love him. He's doing his best. He's saving squirrels from getting stepped on. Like, he really tries to do his best. And then he is a huge contrast to that of the Justice Gang, in which Nathan Fillion and his crew with Hawkgirl and with Mr. Terrific seem bittered. They seem just like, it's just like they don't really care. They're just kind of doing this as a job for them. Nathan, there's some really great jokes with Guy Gardner and Nathan Fillion, kind of his vow. And there's some really nice humor. And it's not a funny, it's not a comedy movie. This isn't Thor: Love and Thunder, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, with here. Like the humor comes from the characters. And just how they, and it feels natural to the characters. It's not like, oh yeah, slapstick, humor. No, it just feels like there's a natural level of kind of humor between who these characters are. And you get the personalities with Guy Gardner, you get the personalities with these characters. And they each, I think, have a little bit of time to shine, but this is a quintessential, a Superman story, a Superman movie. And then they play an interesting part, and it's good to see how that relationship goes to the point where Superman needs to be in two places at once, and he can't. He's got to deal with the bigger threat, and he was able to send the Justice Gang to assist and kind of be his backup as well. It's also really interesting that you learn that Guy Gardner knows that Superman is Clark Kent, and he's trying to assess if Lois Lane knows that Superman is Clark Kent. And he talks about hypnoglasses. Honestly, great scene, and I thought it was well delivered. I was really quite impressed with that. You also see the Hall of Justice, which was a really cool callback. Like I said, it feels like they've ripped the comic pages and transformed them into a movie. And I think that is something that is truly, truly spectacular. The overall, threat is, is contained. Obviously, victories all around, and the way that things are resolved, I think, are quite interesting and leads to I'm really excited for more. The movie ends with Clark Kent being back at the Fortress of Solitude, and Kara, his cousin Supergirl, comes in drunk to get her dog back, which that's going to set up the movie for next summer with Supergirl. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But you can also see a clear difference in these characters. It does feel like this DCU is going to, hopefully, the thing is, I'm rooting for a long and prosperous life. Anyway, the other thing I'm going to touch on before we wrap up this video is Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy is a character that just blew me away. They established him as this accidental woman's man. Like, women love him and they fawn over him, and it is just spectacular, which helps lead to one of how Lex actually has his downfall. Like I said, he's imprisoning all these ex-girlfriends of pocket dimensions. And then one specific, his current girlfriend in this regards ends up, having had a past relationship with Jimmy. Jimmy broke it off because he didn't like her toes. Like, it's so funny. It just reminds me of some guys that, like, you're so nitpicky. And then essentially her wanting to get back with Jimmy and then essentially providing him the evidence to show what Lex has been doing, kind of reveal that he's been orchestrating all these different attacks on Metropolis, that he's orchestrating this war, and then he's doing it because he thinks he's going to profit greatly from all these different things. And so it is very satisfying. It was absolutely very satisfying to see. Now, I'm not going to sit here. I'm probably going to go watch plenty of videos now from people breaking down all the Easter eggs and things like that, and go in and enjoy more what there is. So hopefully you guys go check that out. I hope you got something good from this video. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. It's more on the longer end, but I think this was there's a lot to cover. And I'm going to go see this movie again. And I hope that if you do get the opportunity to go see it, that you have as much fun as I had with it. If I was going to give it a score, it would easily be an 8. It could easily be a 9. It would have been a 10 for me if they had to remove the GDs. I'm actually okay with the S word. Like, it doesn't necessarily bother me. It's something that comes up from time to time. It isn't over prevalent. It isn't overemphasized. It's just, hey, some people talk like that. No big deal. But the GD, I was like, it just felt unnecessary. And that's kind of my thoughts. But absolute wonderful movie. Cannot wait to see more of the DCU. Because what's also interesting is that with Creature Commandos and Peacemaker, those shows are taking part of the DCU. They're obviously more for a mature audience. Those aren't for kids. Those aren't safe for kids. But here we are, with Superman, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Supergirl as well, because there's going to be a little bit of a different theme, and so we'll be back talking about Supergirl maybe here in a year. So outside of that, guys, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you have a wonderful day. God bless. I'll see you in the next video.
They pause in life, it's hardcore mode, but grace and grind share the load. Kids in the pew, joy on display. Game over, now we pray and play.